Hello there. Today's video, Malicious Compliance. Been everything in this room? You got it, boss. Not my own malicious compliance, but overheard then witnessed at work. A few months ago, the two owners at my work had a huge disagreement which has escalated to full-blown screaming matches in the middle of the office and nearly into several physical fights. It came to a head last Friday and owner A decided to pack it all in and leave effective immediately. After lunch, owner B called the warehouse manager up to the office and pointed at owner A's office, situated just off the main open plan office, and said, "I'm too stressed to deal with this, so I'm going home." Been everything in that room. I don't want to see a shred of evidence that owner A worked here when I get back on Monday morning. The warehouse manager looked at the offending office and back to owner B. "Are you sure you want to bin everything, boss?" Owner B looked ready to explode already, and apparently this extra bit of clarification sent him over the edge. "Did I stutter? Get rid of everything in there, or you can clear out your desk too." And so owner B stormed off, and our warehouse manager took out his walkie-talkie and summoned up two of his warehouse staff and relayed the instructions. The warehouse workers questioned it and got the same answer: yes, absolutely everything. And so they got to work. Owner A's personal effects were put into a box and sealed up to be taken to him by one of the purchasing staff who lived nearby. Everything else was bagged up and put into the bins. The paperwork and stationery were boxed up to be shredded and destroyed. Next, the monitor and printer were taken to the bins, followed by the desk and chair. When I left at 4 p.m., the warehouse workers were just starting to take down the wall-mounted bookshelves. I would have expected them to stop there, but when I got in this morning there was nothing in the office. The curtains and blinds are gone, plug sockets and light fittings taken off the walls leaving exposed wires, the tiles removed from the ceiling showing the ductwork and wiring above, the carpet that owner A requested be put in was torn up leaving the underlay. Even the door with owner A's name plaque on it was taken off the hinges. It looks like a construction site in there. Owner B came in at 10 this morning, took one look at the bomb site, and started screaming his head off and demanded to see the warehouse manager. He wanted whoever did to put this right and then get off site as they were fired. If no one owned up, then the whole warehouse shift was fired. Our warehouse manager, never one to give a shit, just peered into the office and said, "You said bin everything, boss. Looks like they did," and walked off. Owner B looked like he was going to burst a vessel. Cheapskate argues over $2.75 iced tea they didn't like on the bill, so I happily switched it out for the $3 soda they ordered instead. Some people are particular about their iced teas. Ours has a tropical flavor, which this woman didn't care for. "Can I just get a diet soda instead?" Not a problem. Trying to hunt down a manager to void out an iced tea for a soda isn't worth the effort, especially for a negligible 25-cent difference between beverages, so I just let it ride. When the check arrived, the party spent a good deal of time poring over how to split the bill. My manager had swung by to run their cards, and they apparently gave him the same lecture about how we should just have regular black iced tea and said I forgot to take it off the bill. When he voided it off and checked with me, I told him, "Oh, that's right," and they switched to a soda and rang it in. He just shrugged his shoulders like his time had been wasted. I figured the table were either being cheapskates or dumb, so I happily dropped off the new bill and said, "So we took off the iced tea and corrected it with her Diet Coke." The guy took another 10 minutes staring at the bill and probably felt like the biggest ignoramus. Dealership, said Sue, so I did. This all started December of last year and just finished last week. So bought a car from one of those buy here and pay here places. I love the car, it's a Mazda 5 from 2014, basically the smallest minivan I've ever seen. Well, on Christmas we drove to some family for dinner and celebration. When we went to leave, the car would not start. We checked everything and found out the horn wasn't even connected, any fuse that wasn't absolutely needed was simply missing, and the tires were THR original tires. Beyond that, we hooked up to the computer and it's read several errors, but the one getting in the way was the immobilizer. I had never known the van had one. I called AAA and set up towing, but because we were in the middle of nowhere, AAA couldn't get a tow truck to us under our membership free, so we had to call a tow truck and then submit the bill to AAA after the fact. So family let us borrow their car and the van was towed to a shop. A few days later, and the shop calls and tell us what's wrong. I live in Texas, a single-party consent state, and I record all my calls thanks to an app on my phone. The long list: if car issues isn't important, the point of this van is a basic work van. The only issue they found stopping it from running is the immobilizer is active, and they can't touch it without talking to the dealer. I three-way call the dealership and the shop, and we talk for 17.43 minutes. During this call, the dealership acknowledged we were not behind and everything should be working unless it malfunctioned. The dealership also gave permission for the shop to bypass it and we would be reimbursed the towing and repairs. All the shop needed to do to get the van running was bypass the immobilizer, and a couple days later we picked up the can and paid the bill. Both bills came to just under $300 and we started calling the dealership. The first few conversations go well and the phone rep seem interested in helping. But mostly I end up getting tossed around from department to department and then disconnected. That went on for some time, and I of course took to Reddit to find out options. As almost always happens, Reddit users know some crazy facts and how to get stuff done. So I followed their advice and kept calling, eventually getting to a supervisor, and the first supervisor said he'd get it taken care of, and we ended the call. 2 more days go by, and nothing is heard. So I call back, get tossed around, and then get another manager who says we are not responsible for mechanical issues and hangs up. I call back now quite annoyed, and eventually get back to the same manager. I explain I have all the information and call recordings including the repair shop three-way call. He cuts me off and says, "What, are you going to take us to court over $296.47? I don't think so, but go ahead and sue. We will win, and if that small amount is worth suing to you, you probably don't have the resources to actually sue." This of course made me quite upset. So off to a justice of the peace and explain what's happened. They give us a small claims form and explain the process. We can fill it out and pay for a constable to serve the dealership or fill out the paper and take it to the dealership unfiled and explain everything to a manager in person. We chose the cheaper route because the manager on the phone was right, we didn't have the money to have it served, only filed. So we transcribed the phone calls. Found out how to fill out the paper. The hardest part was finding the agent. We didn't know what that meant, but we again turned to Reddit and learned. We gathered the bills and all the paperwork and made our way to the dealership's payment center. I wait in line and see the name of the manager is the same as the manager on the phone that told me to sue. I wait in line, and when it's my turn I ask to talk to John, and he comes over and sits across from me. After making introductions and I confirm it's the same guy, I start to explain the situation again. As I'm explaining, I see when he recalls talking to me on the phone. C starts to dismiss me, and I explain that he asked me to sue, and I'm here with all my evidence and the unfixed suit. Giving him one final chance. He starts to look over the papers and asked if I still had the recordings. I said yes, I could email him a copy. We sit and talk for about an hour as he reads, then I sat with a slight aggravated tone. If something isn't done today, not only am I going to head right back to the courthouse and file as well, tack on as much for emotional distress and whatever else the clerk hinted at. The clerk was very open-mouthed with ideas, as well as send a copy of everything to every email on the corporate website. At this, our conversation drew the attention of a woman in a power suit who rushes over for a recap. I find out she's John's boss's boss, and she's none too happy about how far things have gone. She assured me that all would be made right and gave me her cell number and email. I gave her the papers and left. The next Monday at 8 a.m. I got a call asking if credit being applied to the account would be acceptable. I say yes, and she explains they will credit $500 to the account as payments. The payments are only $155 every 2 weeks. I agree and we talk for a few minutes when I ask why it took this much just to get things done. She laughed and said it shouldn't have, and certain people are no longer employed at the company. Well, today was Wednesday and the day of the payment, but when I went to make the payment it was already done. Thank you, power suit lady. Schedule me for evening shift. Make certain you know what you're doing. A couple of recent stories reminded me of something that happened way back when I was a teenager and had a job at a hotel as a busboy in a coffee shop. We had about 95 seats, and on a Saturday and Sunday we would do about 400 covers. It was busy, but I was good. After noon, things would slow down, so I would jump into the dish pit and help them catch up. One Sunday, the back-of-house manager and the general manager were having lunch and they called me over. They asked me to take the next Saturday's evening shift in the dish pit. I reminded them that weekends were pretty busy and they would have a problem if I wasn't bussing on breakfast. They told me they would get someone to cover bussing, but they really needed me in the dish pit that Saturday night. I agreed, but told them that I would need to leave at 11 p.m. on the dot as I relied on public transit to get home, and there was no way I could work late. They said, "No problem," and we had a deal. I showed up at 3 p.m. to absolute chaos. Guess who they had cover bussing? That's right, the dishwasher. The pit was absolutely stacked with dishes, and then I found out why they needed me on that shift. Banquets in the coffee shop used the same glassware, plates and cutlery, and there was a massive banquet going on upstairs. When I got there, the cook line and the banquet crew were going nuts, prepping and setting up tons of centerpieces, place settings, that sort of thing. We had bussing carts and the banquet crew was loading them up and running them up the elevators to the banquet hall. It was pandemonium. The back-of-house manager kept yelling at me. I need more forks right now, and I was fishing through the dozens of busbands from day shift trying to get him the stuff he needed. It took a while, but I managed to it for him. I took it with a grain of salt, since he was actually a pretty good guy, just stressed to the max. Finally, the banquet stuff all went upstairs, and I could clear the backlog. It took me until about 8 p.m. Then, nothing. There was about 400 people attending this banquet, and occasionally I would see a member of the banquet team come down, and I would ask them where the dish carts were. These guys treated me like shit and snapped that they would bring them down when they had a chance. Sure enough, it was about 10 p.m. when the parade of banquet bozos started wheeling cart after cart of dirty dishes in by the pit. There were tons of them, 30 or 40 at least, and none of the bus tubs were sorted. It was all just tossed in. They weren't even scraped into the trash, there was leftover food on lots of the plates. Just before 11 p.m., I see the back-of-house manager talking to his crew, and I went up to him. I was really pissed off. "What the hell am I supposed to do here?" I asked, gesturing to the carts. "Wash the damn things," he snapped back. "There's no time. I leave in 15 minutes, remember? Well, you'll just have to stay late. I can't. I have a bus to catch. If I miss it, I miss my connection, and that's the last bus. So, no, I am leaving, and I told you that last week." He starts getting irate, and I just took off my apron and left without a word. The next weekend, I arrive for my busboy shift, and I get called into the general manager's office. The back-of-house manager was there, and the general manager is asking me why I abandoned the dish pit in such chaos. As it turns out, nobody on the banquet crew would work the pit, and in the morning, there was nowhere near enough dishware and cutlery for the coffee shop. The dishwasher they had covering took one look at the hell and back and quit on the spot. They had to close the coffee shop and lost out on a ton of money. I just looked at them and reminded them that when I said I would take the dish pit for that shift, that I would be leaving on time. It's not my fault that the banquet crew didn't start bringing down the carts until after 10 p.m. The general manager looked at the back-of-house manager and asked him what time they served the meals. 6 p.m. "So you're telling me that your crew took over 3 hours to roll the dishes back downstairs and you didn't do anything about it? What the hell were they doing? Why didn't you assign one or two to push the carts?" Then I pointed out that all the carts weren't sorted and that the plates weren't even scraped. The back-of-house manager gave me the stink eye, and the general manager excused me and said to head down to the coffee shop and pick up the bussing. The following weekend I came in, and there was a big notice targeted at the banquet guys. All busbands were to contain only one item: one pan for dinner plates, one pan for side plates, one pan for glassware, another for cutlery. All dishes were to be in the dish pit no later than 15 minutes after being pulled from the table. All plates were to be scraped of excess food waste before going in the pan. The banquet crew was pissed that they actually had to do their jobs, and the back-of-house manager was pissed that a lowly busboy dishwasher put him in the hot seat. They never asked me to take an evening shift again. That all, folks. If you like this content, please subscribe, hit the like button, and check out my next video. Take care.